The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of a never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 69th episode of World Blockchain Roundtable. Nice. Our hosts for today are Greg from Rivet, Lisa Mighty Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa. I am your master of ceremonies today, and we may be joined by Sean a little bit later in the episode, and Joe's not here today, so I think it's probably just us. Cool. Quick update on the WBRT layer ownership tokens distribution from last week's episode. That episode was on making the world a better place with blockchain, and it was nominated by hodlsignal.io. So thank you for that. And each host from last week will receive 133 layer ownership tokens or lot. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 41 of those lot. And Huddle Signal, who proposed the topic, will also get 41 lot on top of that, I believe. So just a reminder, these are the tokens that are layer ownership tokens. They give you perpetual passive income, free edits in the World Blockchain Roundtable layer, and most importantly, governance votes. These are how we pick topics. This is how we vote on things and stuff. And speaking of that, we have a vote, we have the October submissions ready to go. So if you look in the, there you go. If you look in the layer, you'll see October theme suggestions. And that's where you can put in your idea for what we should talk about. We got a couple in there already. Greg has put in a pretty good one. I didn't expect this one to pop up, but it's great. Wrong answers only. So we could do a Bizarro episode of WBRT where, I don't know, maybe we dress up for it. Make it a costume episode. Greg can wear his I Heart the Establishment shirt.
Yep.
You know, Lisa, you can
wear the rules, everybody.
You can surprise us with your costume, but maybe we'll require one. That'd be, or extra points for it. Maybe not require
sure.
Points.
I put a suggestion in for October. It's my birth month, so I was we can talk about Litecoin, and then I was like, oh, just kidding.
Yeah, I saw that too. Private coins,
privacy,
that's on the table. Yeah. And the way this works is these are all proposals, and we'll take the top like 13, I guess.
And anyone can make a suggestion, not just hosts of the show. So this is open to anybody that's watching. You can get on Den.Social and go to our layer and make a suggestion of what you want us to talk about, which I think is really cool.
And Lisa, you posted a pretty helpful link to get there yesterday. So if you see Lisa's Twitter feed and you wonder if you're supposed to make those suggestions either under her tweet or in the layer that's at the link she gave you, you need to go to the link. But
click through.
Click through and join us over here because you got to be part of the community if you want to play. So
and then those lot tokens that I was just talking about, the layer ownership tokens, that's what's used. Once these go into a proposal, you vote on them, and then we get, I guess, 4 for the month, 1 for each week. So that'll happen. This week, we have a theme of transitioning from number go up to blockchain go up, nominated by Jacob Wayne.
I can't believe Joe's not here for this one.
Yeah,
well, like this is his song.
Busy man. He's crunching on some stuff right now.
Yeah.
I think it'll just be me later for the Den.Social call too. So plug in that later. Definition of topic. I think this one does warrant a quick definition because it's pretty vague. For me, I was just answering this actually to somebody in Den. What does this even mean? To me, it means getting people away from the mindset of trying to gamble on something and start using it instead. You know, the reason that it's valuable in the first place is because it's world changing, it's disruptive, and it makes life on Earth better on average for everyone instead of just a few. And so that's worth diving into and learning and using and stuff. So blockchain go up, I think, would be the number of blockchain applications that are actually used for real world use cases, and make, I guess, like the prevalence of the technology being applied in the world.
Well, it speaks to me in the same way that, like, you know, you're not supposed to chase paper if you want to get paper, right? Like, if you want to make money, then you can't focus on making money. You got to focus on building something, creating something that generates value, and the money follows. But if all you can look at is your bank account balance and go, I want that to go up, there is no utility for anyone but you in that kind of thinking. And blockchain is all about positive sum value creation, right? It's about liberating people with what you exchange. It's about permissionlessness, to jump into current events, right? Like I
guess that's when money makes you a slave. So I guess blockchain would be making you a slave if you were just looking for a number to go up.
Right.
And when you're building something with it, you're raising up.
Well, definitely.
You're standing on top of it, field. You know.
Yeah. And you won't know which numbers are going to go up if all you're focused on is which numbers have gone up in the past. That's a terrible pattern to follow if you expect to predict the future.
That's a good point. Speaking of current events, you just mentioned that, Greg. What's going on right now? We've got there's the congressional oversight hearing with Gary Gensler speaking. I haven't been following that this morning. I might have to catch up on it and see. I'm specifically interested in what Toomey had to say or had to ask, and how our elected leaders and appointed regulators are answering those questions that should be coming from the people. We'll see how it plays out. Sometimes I'm not so sure who the questions are being asked for and where the answers are coming from that are given. So
I think you can always anticipate that stuff
a little bit.
I think you can always anticipate that stuff is like pre-discussed. So when I worked for the state of Indiana, for example, what happened on camera on the live streamed recordings of session is stuff that they would all strategize about in a meeting where cameras were definitely not allowed by both parties before, right? So anything that they're asking with the cameras on, you can almost guarantee is scripted. Like, we built a voting system, or we thought we were building a voting system for Indiana, but in reality, what we were building was a stage management system. You know, like a lot of what they're doing, they like, there are surprises that happen during session, but there are very few. So these guys know what they're going to ask, and the questioners know what they're going to be asked, and they're asking it for a very specific reason.
It's a play.
Best example is when they had what's his face come on, the classic clip where the head of the CIA lied to Congress, right, about spying on Americans. The guy who asked the question knew he was going to lie and asked it anyway.
That's something that everyone on camera there knows, that anyone who's interested in this topic is listening to every damn word they say, and they're recording it, and they're going to play it back, and they're going to clip out 3 seconds to, and it may or may not be in context. So there's a lot of reasons to think about what you're going to say before you say it. So
for us, it's a counter narrative against the sort of the establishment narrative, right? The award from Treasury that came down today, that merely publishing the code from Tornado Cash is not a violation of the sanction. That was a brilliant move on their part strategically to separate the legitimate grievance that anybody in the United States would have against them who has money in Tornado Cash right now, or who publishes a blockchain API. I mean, I love the fact that Infura and Alchemy look like sniveling cowards who were also wrong, because our company came out and said, we're going to publish this anyway because it's a free speech issue. And we noticed,
so that's what that was about. That clears that up for me.
They didn't solve the underlying problem, right? The problem that they've got ultimately is this system that they're using, they were given power to use specifically to punish foreign nationals, not to stop U.S. citizens from interacting with open source code. So it's still an overreach, right? Like, and there's nothing they can do to remedy that other than pull it off the list.
Yeah, I noticed that Bruce Fenton put on his official campaign website, he's running for Senate, I guess, and he put the Tornado Cash code, published it on his website as a statement. You know, of course, everything he's doing is a statement right now because he's running for office. But I thought that was a pretty good position to take.
Yeah. The real law that's being violated here, just so everybody knows, is the Administrative Procedures Act, right? The administrative agencies on the executive side are not allowed to do stuff that makes law that Congress didn't previously explicitly grant them the power to do. It has to be not just within their power technically, but within their power purposefully. And
so is this kind of a checks and balances situation? This is an overreach of what you're allowed to do unilaterally by decree.
The legislature could have given them the power to do this, but it didn't, right? And that's what this is about.
Meanwhile, Lisa showed me a link to an article on Bitcoin.com talking about Russia's CBDC, where they're doing the opposite. They're giving people a private entry point. Supposedly, I haven't read up on it, but it's interesting to see. It makes me think about, like, you know, the different approach that different nation states are taking when it comes to this type of technology. And it reminds me of something that someone in our government was questioning, like, why do we need a CBDC? Like, yeah, okay, it makes sense for China for the way that they operate and the way that they are, but why would the USA need this functionality? Why would we want to do this? So the why and the who and the what, when it comes to world-changing tech, you're seeing dramatically different approaches on adoption or fighting against it. And to me, it's just interesting to see who's taking, like, people are drawing lines in the sand, and it's interesting to see who's on what side.
Classically speaking, the United States would embrace the private sector, right? That's what won us the internet. The reason Facebook and Twitter and these edifices that became, globally powerful to the point where they threatened nation states all over the world, except for ours, came because the United States promoted the creation of such things here.
But now they've admitted that they're driven by and run and bow down to the three-letter agencies.
Right. Well, and they think they get a second bite at stuffing the genie back in the bottle is what they're thinking right now.
I'm at the point where I don't even know if the three-letter agencies know what's going on within their own agencies.
I agree.
Like compartmentalization. Once you reach a certain, Lisa, I think I was talking to you about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Once you reach a certain security level in our government, you get more and more compartmentalized operations going on. And so, a lot of times you get, like, the CIA investigating something the FBI is doing, not knowing that they're like, oh, wait, this is just two different, like, fake things that think each other is real. Or maybe that's just Hollywood. I don't know. But that shit happens. People don't know what's going on in the next room sometimes,
right. Oh, because all the real conversations have to be had off camera too, right? Like, you can't have a conversation with an unexpected potential outcome in a place where it gets recorded if you're making policy and you're doing it by the seat of your pants because you don't have governing principles in mind.
That's how abusers stay in control, though, is to isolate their victims.
Yep. They get the plan for a long time about what they're thinking.
It's disheartening to talk about the relationship between citizens and the
what's supposed to be their government
as abusers and victims, but a lot of times that's the case. I was watching an interesting. There's just been so much where I've given up on the naivety of maybe they're just stupid. Maybe they just don't know what they're doing. Maybe they just don't understand what's at stake. And I'm moving. Every time I see something like an interview I watched with Gary Gensler, where he said at his opening line, it was like a 20-minute interview or something, or maybe even less. Anyway, his opening statement was, I feel like the American people have a pretty good idea of what's going on with regards to the government not necessarily always, or the regulators not necessarily looking out for their best interest in all cases. And that's not an exact quote. That's a paraphrase, but he said that.
Right. Oh yeah.
Like, the first thing he said in the interview, and I was like, dude, are you serious right now? And he's right. To an extent.
It's like Roosevelt's. Roosevelt's fireside chats. I was listening to those, and it was shocking to me that people weren't offended when he was saying like that people are not intelligent enough. I don't remember the exact words, but it was like, the American people aren't going to understand what to do with their money, and you're not going to know how to handle this. So we're going to walk you through this and tell you. And they've treated us like we're stupid from the beginning. The whole point of us having 401ks and financial advisors, and you're too dumb, Social Security in itself, you're too dumb to know how to take care of yourself.
Right. Which is insane.
It is completely insane.
Because if their argument is human fallibility, nullifies the notion of laissez-faire, right? That's an indictment of their own desire to.
I don't know what you just said, but yeah.
He's basically saying that if the average person can't be trusted to handle things fairly and effectively,
because of human frailty.
Are they implying that they're immune from that statement themselves?
If all humans are fallible, and therefore
yes.
we can't control our own affairs, what gives them so much superpower?
Right.
This is the problem with that whole thing. With me, it's not
they're
even.
in secret clubs.
Yeah, it's like my neighbor. One of them, I was talking to recently. She's not really comfortable with keeping her own funds, for example, outside of the bank. She wants to be able to call somebody who can reverse a transaction and say, oops, that kind of thing. And so even if you assume that, Roosevelt was onto something there where he said, hey, people can't be trusted with their own assets and with their own lives. We have to babysit them and take care of it for them. That's on its face can be a system that we have, but you're introducing, like Greg was talking about, the problem comes when, you're not altruistically doing that. You have people taking advantage of the fact that people don't know what happens with money and how it works. And they're using it to enrich themselves at the expense of people's savings accounts.
That's sort of what I was saying, but also kind of, you have to take it a step further, right? Human beings have gotten things right only by the wisdom of the crowd, right? The fact that a whole bunch of people try something and most of them do it wrong until somebody gets it right. And then we all adopt that way. That is the process of the free market, right? But if you make it so that only a few people are allowed to try, you hobble that to the point where the sample size is so small that the right answer does not emerge, right?
Yeah, think about mining Bitcoin, right? You need a bunch of CPUs, you need a bunch of brains, all working in parallel to come up with the right solution. It's sort of the same thing with human ingenuity. How much brain power can you throw at a problem? If you only allow a select few to even work on a problem, this is my issue with,
it's always been a numbers game.
Yeah, even scientific research and stuff. Whenever you outlaw research, no, you cannot learn this thing. You cannot study that thing. You're saying,
God forbid, you have to ask us permission first and prove that you're qualified in all of the ways that we say you need to be qualified before we let you talk about something seriously.
Or don't even tell the rules or the boundaries of the game and then punish later after they've collected information.
Well, and by that conception, we wouldn't have quantum mechanics and we wouldn't have Einstein's theory of relativity because we would have stuck with Newtonian gravity, right?
Well, that's what I like about. That's one of the things I like about free market capitalism, is it's proven itself to be extremely powerful as a tool, and even even some people that are trying to fight back against our current system and implement something different that's more akin to socialism or communism, a lot of them are even recognizing that what we have now is not free market capitalism. And that's the reason it's not working,
Right. And I don't think that that's necessarily either totally true or totally false, right? Like you can't suppress ideas. You can just drive them underground, right?
Sure.
So these processes are still happening. It's just that the process of rolling them out has to be so much more insurgent, right? You have to extract somehow the black market these ideas and shove them forward into the mainstream eventually. We watched the whole thing happen over the pandemic. Like, now we're allowed to say stuff like cloth masks don't work. That would have immediately black flagged this channel.
It is interesting to see how quickly, and maybe this is due to things like social media and Web 2 and the way that we have centralized the access to information, but also like bred an entire generation to be super low attention span and on to the next thing and on to the next thing and on to the next thing, to where it seems like it sort of works today where you can change the narrative entirely just 2 years after, like we've always been at war with Europa. We've always said it this way kind of thing. Or just like what you were talking about, the cloth masks thing, or the fact that the vaccines, which I'm relatively pro-vaccine myself, but I still don't deny that there is an obvious, absurd, clampdown on any information that questioned the absolute purity and holiness of the vaccines when it came out.
Someone trying to give you information that would change your mind the second you heard it and found it to be true.
And that's been walked back now, and people are just like, oh yeah, it's not like that anymore. Yeah, we know more about what the virus is, and we know more about COVID than in the beginning. Right. But that doesn't mean it's okay that we were lied to. Literally,
it's a non-response to the notion
and no
that
one's being
had
held
to
accountable
from Twitter before you could say that out loud. Like, we would have figured that out a lot sooner if we wouldn't be trying to suppress all dissent.
I still find it difficult to get past with a lot of people to get past the barrier of admitting that we've been lied to.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you believe, or it doesn't even matter if you believe that we were lied to for our own good. Maybe you believe that we were lied to for our own good, but admitting that we were lied to is the first step.
Right. Well, and
reality there, this is where we are. We're not seen as somebody that is self-governing anymore by those that are doing the governing.
It goes back to that Roosevelt thing. You're too stupid to, whoever the they is, and that's where I get to the point where I'm like, where I do want to drop the rope and stop this. They have us pitted against each other all the time. The blue team and the red team, or the whatever. And Donnie, the constitutionalist, the other day said, it's time for us to drop the rope and stop fighting each other. And and I was thinking of Joe doing that. Just build something, and we need to walk away from this asking, and the comment about free men don't ask permission. We need to stop asking them permission to live our lives in a free way when
they have a right to demand it of us.
Right. They don't respect our thoughts, and they clearly are not governing in our best interest. They don't respect us for our thought process. When they are lying to us. That's the only thing that we do know.
They're lying the second they claim to have a right, because they, being the government, are the people against whom rights are enforced. They have no rights. The individuals
they have no money
who make it up.
Thing that a lot of people.
This is make up the government have rights. The individuals who live under a government have rights. Governments are against whom rights are enforced. They have no right to do anything.
Exactly.
We have rights that they may not break. And that is the base truth.
That's where it's been flipped on its head. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I like this tornado cash thing. The Treasury came out and announced this morning that that we weren't breaking any laws at Rivet by publishing uncensored endpoints, right? They said that, but they said another thing that was really galling. Like, all these people who are claiming that they can't get their money out of tornado cash, though. They just need to come and get a license from us. Well, what gives you the right to demand a license?
A license for what? I missed that.
In the law. A license to come withdraw your funds from tornado cash. You can come and apply. It reminds me of that FBI raiding the safe deposit box company and saying, "Oh, we just need you to come and identify yourself to us so that you can get it out."
Well, that's what the SEC is doing with the Veritasium holders.
Right.
There's this thing called the Veri Fund, and they're having them fill out all this information, and supposedly they're going to make them whole or whatever.
Right. Which gives them the right to even know who you are.
There's several people that have complied, done all the stuff, and have never been given any funds. And I'm like, all they're doing is gathering information on you.
Right, exactly. You just gave them what they needed to hire marketers to profile everybody who might be involved in a similar service.
Right. And so at what point is your government, scheming against you that it's a tyranny? I mean,
right. And it just depends on where you decide to define what you're willing to tolerate before it becomes tyranny in given person's.
That's what blows me away the most, to be honest with you, because I can tolerate a lot. I can tolerate a lot. I can live and get along in a variety. You can
live on a ship for 4 months.
Yeah, you can lock me in a box and put me around the ocean for a year. I can live under a variety of different government systems. I can figure that out and I can get along. But even I'm getting to the point where I'm like, all right, you've either got to own up to what we're doing here and saying that, okay, literally you're just trying to destroy everything that we've founded ourselves on for the past 200 and some odd years, or admit that maybe you're playing too many political games. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people have to just be playing political games for their own careers.
Well, it has to be.
Some people have to be literally.
Oh, you mean
against the system?
But they're multi-millionaires. They're multimillionaires when they come out of Congress and they only make a couple $100,000 every year on their salary.
And that's where the question exactly. That's where the question has moved in my head is, from, like I said before, I was naive and I was just like, maybe they just don't understand because it's so new. And now the question is more like, okay, they're not naive, but which ones are okay with destroying the nation and its people and just to make money, and which ones are well, I guess they're all okay with that.
A lot of them that are living in Martha's Vineyard that got a visit from 2 plane loads of illegal immigrants today. You're probably a good starting point.
I have been reading about that a little bit. Apparently, there's been a distribution of burden to an extent from the borders into Chicago, DC. I didn't know about the Martha's Vineyard.
That was this morning.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, it wouldn't be too hard to go back to a world that's a lot more like Ellis Island. There's tons of opportunity in this country still, and we sort of, out one side of our mouths, say we want people to come here legally, but then out the other side of our mouths, we have a policy that says, please apply through this process that takes 10 years, unless you happen to have this one very particular set of skills that we are using essentially a trade barrier to promote the absorption of. It's a form of mercantilism.
I went through that to
restrict the flow of labor, but it's also undeniably targeted at people who pick for people who jobs that people don't really like doing unless they have no other choice.
That process is so burdensome. To get a green card, to get a permanent residency card, is so burdensome that, like you said, 10 years, right? That's a long freaking time. I served with people.
I pulled that number out of my ass, but
what surprised
me? I thought it was 5 or 7. My brother-in-law was from Finland, and it took a long time, and it was very expensive with the attorneys and all that to get his citizenship. Well, your wife's from Germany.
Yeah, right.
Dave.
Yep.
Is she a citizen, American citizen?
She is. No, she's a permanent resident. She has a green card.
Permanent resident. Okay.
Yeah. She was one of the people that were like, oh, you're good enough to be, let into the U.S., I guess. She has a PhD. She's a scientist. She's doing research on, rare genetic diseases. And they were like, oh, okay, you can come in.
And they'll make enough money pulling taxes off her income.
So I guess
if she were like a master.
Well, then we got married, so that helped too.
Yeah.
If she were a master orchard manager, because she spent so many years picking fruit that she knew it inside and out, and could manage a team, right? To do it really well and efficiently. We're not going to let those people in.
I don't know if that would have made
current system.
I don't know.
No, because middlemen make money off of those people.
Right. Exactly. It's ultimately a system of exploitation to not have a legal immigration system for them. But and that's really kind of the sad part about it is. People look at the folks who are saying, no, we need legal immigration as if they're being cruel. but in reality, what they're trying to do is make it so that people come in above board, so that they pay their fair share of the system that we've got. But
they would also have to pay them minimum wage,
right,
to do those jobs.
And minimum wage, in fairness, is usually a system that cuts the bottom rung off the ladder, as opposed to lets more people climb up to a higher rung. Mm-hmm. But
there's just this really suspicious disconnect. I'll say suspicious. There's just this disconnect between what I learned growing up and mm-hmm. what I've experienced as an adult. You know? Mm-hmm. You learn that
when you run a business, man,
you can start a business and you can come up with a unique idea, and that immigrants make us more diverse and brings a variety of different ideas that maybe we wouldn't have thought about. In the military, I learned that, we've won battles and wars over, just having a variety of different people that maybe other nations wouldn't have access to, or, that benefits us in so many ways. And there's the Statue of Liberty with the thing that says, come on, let's go build stuff. And then as an adult, I get out of school, I get out of the military, I get into like, all right, let's go do all this stuff that I've been learning about and, fighting for and all that. And it's just like, no. That's all bullshit. Unless you're, one of a sort of a predetermined class of people. And that's the part that's like, I understand people on a variety of political sides and their frustration with the system, because nobody likes to be lied to and then slapped in the face with reality. Not everybody knows how to fix it, but a lot of people from a lot of different sides are pissed off. And I think a lot of people just want to.
Everybody hates someone who pretends.
Even if they think their idea on how to make it better is stupid, they still just want to make things better underlying.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's really the tough part about it, is like all the people trying to, centrally control everything. Most of their hearts are in the right place, in that they want everyone to prosper. And that's what gets them started in it. But they just refuse to unblind themselves to the fact that they don't have the kind of power they think they have. They can claim that kind of power.
We read about corruption as if it's like in the context of other countries. We learn about political corruption, like, oh yeah, in Russia, it's bad, and it is bad over there. Like, there's so much money wasted in that system because along the way, on every step, people are scamming and skimming money off the top, and it's a good old boy system, and it's just basically USSR, that it's remained as a mafia after the collapse, and that's still who runs it and all that. We learn that about other nations as if like, yeah, look at them, that's terrible. And so it's
meanwhile, what do you think a lobby is?
Shit is happening right here. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And ultimately, it's about getting people with a tiny hubris to admit that that's what they've been doing all this time. It's just being hubristic. And that's really hard to do for people who genuinely feel hurt when you say they're hurting everybody.
A lot of people can't go back, though. People that are corrupt, because they'll go to jail.
Well, I mean, and that's the other part of the problem, right? Is like, we need to have a much less punitive system of admitting we fucked up.
They're stuck. They're stuck being corrupt assholes, because what else?
Or they're going to get lynched, right? And their families are going to go hungry. This is a system that sets up people having to stick with wrong standpoints.
That's where, as this dollar dies, the truth will come out, because they can't be blackmailed, because the dollar's not worth anything. Right. So the truth will start coming out. This is in Cliff High's data, and secrets will be revealed because they can't be blackmailed anymore.
Yeah, well, we'll get on. We got to get to the questions, but with that, I want to say that
it's pretty exciting.
That's interesting. When you break the money, you break the thing that's been fueling the corruption.
You break the slavery.
And on the other side, though, my thing with taxes is like, why are we paying taxes if they can just print money? We should either pay taxes or not print money, kind of thing. And if they're just going to print money, won't they keep the elite into the elite by just inflating how much money they have, kind of thing?
Well, inflation can only go so far, right? Before people realize it's screwing over the people who make the least of it.
Well, that goes back to how much
if you're not taking advantage of the Cantillon effect, right? The effect that happened when you add money to the system is the first people to spend it get to use it with full purchasing power. It only dilutes in the hands of the second person to spend that money, right? Because up until the point where someone spends it, it's not in the flow of commerce. It's waiting outside the flow of commerce. And you give somebody a ton of cash that you just printed up. It's the same thing as the first time you spend a counterfeit bill. It's going to have the same purchasing power that everybody has at that moment. And only then does it start to dilute it. So the people who get it first get the advantage of the printing press. And the people who use it after that are the ones who get hosed.
The effects of that have already been dispersed by the time it trickles down.
Exactly. So if you print money and give it as a benefit to companies who are supposed to use it to hire more workers, by the time it reaches the worker's paycheck, the worker is eating the cost of inflation while they benefit from
so all the PPP loans, all those coming out, all that free money that flowed through the banks through the Great Infection didn't hurt the government or all that.
No, it didn't.
But it
didn't
actually hurt
people who got it first.
The people that received it.
Right. Well, I mean, and it hurts us all is the thing they need to realize.
It hurts us all.
Ultimately, it's hurting them because it makes the workers feel ripped off when their purchasing power drops by 40% amounts, and they feel like they're unfairly paid.
20 years saving up money so that they can like have a better life for their family, and you come along and you say, "Oh, by the way, that money in your savings account, purchasing power ain't what it used to be."
Right.
Yeah. They're literally having a meeting. There was an article that the Social Security department or whatever is talking about having a cost of living raise, and they're considering 40% because the cost of living is not even possible on the Social Security
that is
rates right now.
That is accurate, and it's scary because like literally the other day we were planning. So Rivet's real quick story. Rivet is right now planning for our next raise, right? So one thing that we do as a company that's a little different is we understand all of our costs, like right down to the marginal cost per transaction or request that people make right after they up a base server. What does each request cost? We know that, right? A lot of folks don't get to that fine level of detail in their budget. We looked at our own pay and looked at inflation. We're like, we set ourselves up to be able to stay afloat, and everybody that's on our staff, like we have to pay more than ourselves already in order to even get them in today's market rates. But to give ourselves a cost of living increase for just 2 years, we would have to add something like $1,500 to each of our annual or monthly pay for just 2 years. It's insane. So like by the time our the people that we hire get that money in their pockets, it's already 20% less valuable at current rates. It's like how is anybody supposed to fairly pay anybody in a system where by the time they finish budgeting, the value of the dollar has dropped so much that they're underpaying people?
I remember trying to talk to a business owner, very good friend of mine, when this is probably 2 years ago, right? Year and a half ago, 2 years ago, probably 2 years. And I was explaining to him that, like, hey, you might want to look into how to hedge against inflation because I don't know if you've been paying attention or not, but like 30% of the supply of all US dollars that exist have been printed nowish,
I heard that.
Bloom, like that's going to have an effect. Not right now. It's a big ship to steer, and it's got to, the things that you were talking about, Greg, it's got to run its course, but it's going to have that effect. And literally, this is where I think the majority of people might still be. He said, the Fed just came out recently and said everything is fine. So I don't think it's
the real injustice of it is that right now, with the markets not having crashed to below the levels that we had before the pandemic started, like we were already due a crash at that point, basically, because we had lots of bubbles. And there are technical ways to define a bubble that you can go into, but we're still appreciably showing the biggest freaking bubble ever. It's like the dot boom times 5 right now. There's some down left in this market, and that down begins the second the people who have all the cash that got printed sell their assets with it. Like the second that hits, that cash gets spent into the market. That's inflation that has to happen. that hasn't yet. So we are nowhere near through the storm. We are, if anything, watching. Do you guys remember the movie Margin Call?
No, I didn't see it.
So Jeremy Irons has this great scene where he's like, so you're telling me that the music is about to stop, and we're going to be holding the biggest bag of ridiculous, terrible assets ever. He said odious excrement when he said it's fantastic Jeremy Irons-ishness. But the bottom line was the guy responded to him going, no, the music's just slowing. If the music stopped, so to speak, the losses would be 10 times greater than the value of this company. Like, the music is just slowing right now. We are experiencing what the music feels like when it's slowing. When it stops, the dollar's going to go real fast into pretty valueless. And people are going to notice it a lot quicker than usual. But right now we're just, we're playing on the edge of a cliff.
And that's what
talking about it like it's already a recession.
Right? That's what Bitcoin was invented for, or discovered for, or assembled for.
Exactly. And that's why number go up is such a stupid way to think about money.
It could be today or tomorrow. This was 2000, pre-2010. But this is the whole idea, is like we should probably have something for when that collapses, because there's probably, back then it was obvious that it was not going anywhere good and it wasn't being turned around. Right. So, hey, let's get on to questions. Yeah, let's segue into questions. We've got, I think the first one here is from Juicy J, unless it's changed since I looked it up. Cool. So pretty good quick question here, which is, where did the number go up technology meme originate? Really, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you the first time that I heard it was on Super Happy Dragon Lucky, when I think Ty from I forget the company name, one of the NFT companies, and Joe started a segment on number go up, because it was such a meme back then about like SSL people are paying attention to. So I don't know actually where it originated from. Greg, Lisa, you got any?
I just looked it up. So this is an article on a guy's blog by the name of David Gerard, and this article is written in 2019, and he says the phrase "number grow up" without a "the" for ungrammatical effect has long been used wherever Goodhart's law applies, which is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And that is really the heart of the matter, right? So that's who first applied number grow up to cryptocurrency. And this came up in a Twitter discussion with this guy back then. He was talking to a guy named Chris DeRose, and he said, earliest number go up found in crypto discussion is from Something Awful, not the Buttcoin thread, but one of the other Something Go Awful crypto threads at the time, or Something Awful crypto threads at the time. And a comment by user Blade Runner on October 5th of 2017. And that was when the bubble was in full swing for ICOs. He said, it's legitimately amusing to see a ham shoeshine boy incessantly screeching with no knowledge of how Buttcoin works beyond number go up, me could have had big number goon bad. There are many reasons why this is a terrible investment, and these haven't been explained over and over again. Or these have been explained over and over again, and yet the man continues to screech while pointing at an imaginary number inflated by ridiculous amounts of margin trading on an exchange that can't be withdrawn from. And it was promptly adopted, both on thread and the main Buttcoin thread, particularly by this guy. And the earliest crypto Twitter number go up without a the that he can find is from @VexingCrypto on 15 November 2017. So
2017 ICO phase.
Yeah, I'll put this link in the chat, and we can add it to the show notes. But yeah, this is like, Goodhart's law is really the key to this, which has been around in finance or in business culture forever. If you start measuring something, that's interesting. You're measuring a thing as a secondary, because if you're measuring a primary, then you're going to make it a bad measure. And you just start by measuring it in a way.
If you measure the thing you're actively trying to change or hoping will change, right, I can see that not being a very neutral measurement. Yeah.
You can't move the number up. You can't move the number up by measuring the number.
It goes back to what you said earlier. So you can't count, if you want money, you can't count the money. You have to look at your building the business.
Right. Don't
building
chase the
something.
paper.
Don't chase the paper. Yeah.
That's why I've always been more of a miner, than a trader. I've tried trading and stuff because, like, it looks like people were making money. I was like, I don't know, let me try it.
But that's like when you go to Vegas and everybody says, "Oh, I won $1,000." They didn't tell you they lost $5.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I think a lot of those traders are not talking about their losses as much as
and the real key comes from some really interesting early 1900s stuff about the clockwork universe idea breaking down. Right, there's this idea that if you knew exactly the movement of the planets, exactly the movement of everything, that you could predict the future, all molecular movement. You can predict the future as it stands by just knowing, like, my hand is here and therefore all matter relative to that is here. And we know that this is going to happen next because this is how the molecules will move. Future is predetermined, right? From that point, if you could figure it out like that. Problem is you can't, because of this thing called chaos. You're going to have intervening factors that change the way outcomes happen every time. That's why when you look at a chart of value, like if you look at Bitcoin and try to predict the candles, impossible. Actually, quite literally impossible, because it's identical to what statisticians call a random walk.
Do you guys believe that Bitcoin is manipulated?
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin, like the number go
up? The charts.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everything's across the board. Wall Street.
You can trade in futures. You can manipulate a currency.
I know Wall Street and all that is, but I didn't know if you guys believe Bitcoin.
Yep. The futures trades like totally allow you to suppress or increase a price.
Because I hear about like these big buys, but those are like over the counter and stuff, and so then the charts aren't affected by that.
Not always, apparently. I was what's his name?
Michael Saylor.
Yeah, Michael Saylor was saying that when he buys, he said like he buys like X amount every 2 seconds. I'm not saying that's manipulation, but like if you're buying huge amounts every couple of seconds, you're going to affect the markets. It's going to go up. Opposed to like whenever I hear Elon talking about, for example, selling Tesla, it takes months for him to like go through and process that, because he'll strategically try to only sell it whenever the markets can absorb a little bit at a time, so as not to try to affect it. And then once he's done, he'll be like, yeah, okay, I'm done.
Well, he has a different situation though, because Elon has a fiduciary responsibility as to the Tesla shareholders, where Saylor doesn't owe Bitcoin holders crap. He has no responsibility, or you know what I mean? He could sell a bunch of Bitcoin and tank the market, and
right, as long as it helps his company,
as long as it helps
adhering to his fiduciary duty.
Right.
Whereas Elon had to use his best judgment on whether or not this was going to be good for Tesla's shareholders to continue to hold it. And there was under no circumstances where dumping it and have it go up was good for them, but also holding it and having it go down was not good. He just realized the volatility was too much for the company. Or at least it was too much for the company in light of everything else that was going on that we have no idea of because we're not on Tesla's board,
Well, the case I was thinking of was when he was trying to avoid being forced to dump it later, just in case this Twitter thing doesn't work out, and he's on the hook for $42 billion, and his investors pull out, so that he has the cash to do it without having to like immediately sell a bunch of stocks. He was a very forward-thinking person, obviously.
Well, and
maybe those were bad examples.
True or not, he does run an electric car company that's supposed to be about saving the planet from environmental devastation that he believes in. Right, that's why he started it.
Except that batteries actually devastate the planet more than.
If that is your company's mission and vision, though, you're not being true to your fiduciary duty if you violate it. And if he began to feel like he was violating it by holding on to a proof of work mined coin, whether that was right or wrong, Like if he genuinely believed it, that was enough to say my fiduciary duty says this is what I must do. Because it's bad for Tesla's investors if they don't follow the mission, right?
It is hard to say what people genuinely believe, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And that's that part about judging it from an armchair point of view, right? Like we can't sit here and say he was right or wrong because of his beliefs being genuine or disingenuous, right? There's no way to tell that. We just have to look at it and say, was this rational from a certain point of view if you believe what you say you believe? And if so, then we got to give them some leeway. But if not, then we hold their feet to the fire, right?
Let's see.
But in his case, I think it was probably a reasonable, although wrong, decision.
Let's see what the next question is. We're already straying from the number go up one, but that's cool. Thanks for looking that up, Greg, because I didn't actually know where the original history was, and I hadn't thought of stuff like what was that called? That theory was called what again?
It's called Goodhart's Law.
Goodhart's Law.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'll have to go look up Goodhart's
Hang on
Law.
1 second, guys. I will be right back.
Okay, go do it. I'll read the question while you're not right back yet.
Yeah.
So Jacob Wayne asks, do you think the media will ever start talking about utility when they bring up cryptocurrency, or will they always dumb it down to numbers and energy use to slow adoption? That's a great question. I don't know where the media gets their talking points from, except in a lot of cases, I do know that there are people that tout themselves as experts and consultants who will charge a consultant fee to tell them this is what cryptocurrency is, and this is all it is, and this is how it works, and this is how you should talk about it. So I think there needs to be more consultants that understand the technology of and the implications of the technology that are not financial people. Maybe is one of the things that's required to happen first. But I think that's the most exciting thing right now. That everybody, to some extent, like money is exciting. Like when you see money happening, you're like, oh shit, look at that, because it's a struggle that we're all familiar with. Some of us are familiar with. So if you see like, oh man, maybe I can do better in life if I have more money, and this seems to be doing a lot of money stuff, there's where the attention goes. It's more abstract and more complicated to think about the actual reason that number might be going up, the underlying technology and the utility of what the software is doing that makes people want to use it and makes people want to either invest in it or exchange in it or operate in it.
Right. Well, I think there's another point here that's worth making, right? Ever since we invented blockchains and the ability to mint new coins on top of an existing coin, right? Like when we came up with the idea of smart contracts that could create token contracts, right? So you have Ether, and then it can be traded around as the fuel for exchanges in everything from like Askcoin to Dragons to whatever, right? Like we created these abstractions, but we still limit their supply, right? A true utility coin would have a definite supply, but not a limited supply, right? Like if you wanted to, Rivet's about to launch one, actually. I'll expose a little bit here.
Sure.
Just because it makes a really great example, right? We as a company charge right now either one DAI or $1 for 100,000, or actually we charge 50 cents now, and we have a discount, but or a volume discount, but let's say we charged $1 for 100,000 requests. There would be no reason on earth for us to limit a token created to a request in any kind of supply constraint way, right? Like we should print as many of those as we want to sell. Right now, that's not the way tokens work. Tokens don't have an unlimited mint on them because a lot of their utility is in the fact that scarcity drives up their value.
I would say that I was thinking about this a little bit recently. I would push back a little bit just to say that there is an engineering reason to limit supply, a couple of them. And one of them
limit
is
to a definite supply, but not a hard cap.
Well, what if you want to distribute? What if let's take software licenses for an example.
I was going to say it depends on your use case.
Issuing a license, and you've got to use this license to operate on a particular piece of software, just like Adobe or Microsoft would do, or Dragon Chain or whatever. If you want to decentralize the issuance of the license itself, meaning you want to create a system that just lives, that everybody can participate in, and also you don't want the burden and the expense of organizing, licensing, distribution, and things like that yourself as a company or as a project or a DAO or whatever, then capping the supply and putting it out there saying, here's what we got, would incentivize people to trade in those themselves so that they can issue them to people. Oh, you want to buy some? Yeah, you can get them from anybody who has them. Right. And then you don't have that burden on yourself. You can decentralize that centralized issuance.
Right. That is true.
And if you have
ran into a situation where the price was so insanely high that it was well over your marginal value to, like, let's say the price goes up so much that people are like, I can't afford this and I want it. Right. Billionaires are made by selling, as much of a thing that's valuable to as many people as find it valuable. That they can sell. If somebody wants to buy 2 of your thing and it's valuable to every person on earth, you just made yourself a billionaire if you can sell that for 50 cents a piece, right?
The fungibility and the like 16 decimal places that Ethereum has, or however, whatever it is, you have an ERC20 or something like that as a license, then you could always just charge $1 for it, $1's worth of the license,
right? Some other token, right?
So that's true. The cost of licensing went up, so now I have to spend more money on it, and I can't afford that.
Right. But if you want people to just to address the question, you want people to just talk about utility, then a pure utility thing would be of definite supply, but of unlimited mint, right? Like, you'll be able to come to Rivet and always buy a request token, no matter how many are in circulation, for the price that we're selling them at. And so
you'll be able to always redeem a request token for a request. No matter what the market price is, it's always worth one request.
Right, exactly. So you will be able to use those in any quantity that you have them. And we will not in any circumstances be like, well, the secondary markets would be really upset with us if we stopped minting them or if we start minting them again at our original sale price. So we're not because we want to have secondary trading going on. So we're trying to create a trade commodity. Right? No, we're going to literally print as many of them as that you want to buy from us. And
so, how do you make that sexy for TV? Back to the question.
Sexy for TV, because then you can automate it.
Huh?
Then you can automate it. Then it becomes a background process, right? Markets can be automated.
The media is controlled, so I don't think you have to worry about what the media. You pay the media. The media is controlled.
Imagine a DApp that could buy its own infrastructure.
Let's assume for a moment that the television news channels are trying to make a lot of money through advertising, and they will show whatever they think will glue your eyeballs and ear holes to their messaging, just to make sure that you're there to watch the ads and to hear the ads, and that their advertisers keep paying them. Let's assume that's true, right?
Right, but
what would it take? What would it take to get them to start talking about the utility of cryptocurrencies, to get them to talk about the actual human importance of treating everyone fairly down to the monetary systems that we all use?
Overabundance
of ads wanting that?
So much, it would be so cheap that people don't, you've heard too cheap to meter, right? Like, everything, it would have to be too cheap to meter for the utility to matter exclusively.
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry.
Okay, let's say you want to cover all your costs and what you charge, and you started thinking about how much money you spend every 50 years on door hinges, right? Mm-hmm. My door hinges are wearing down a little bit every time someone opens the door to my business. Start charging a surcharge that's a door hinge tax that's a fractional of a penny. You're going to waste more money measuring that than you're going to make back in covering the cost of replacement door hinges in 50 years, right? So there's no point to metering it. That's the concept of too cheap to meter. So then when door hinges come up next time, you're just going to talk about the fact that they help the doors of your business swing open, not how much they're costing you over time in an economic sense.
I see. So it needs to be less. Does it need to be less volatile, more mature over time, so that it's more boring?
Even if it's volatile, it needs to fluctuate within the bounds of a point where it's like it's so cheap that we don't want to bother talking about it because it's a waste of everybody's time.
Is it the price of it, or is it the volatility of it that makes it exciting for people, so they want to hear people talk about it, though? You know what I mean?
It's really more the novelty of it right now.
Yeah.
You know, Wall Street was pretty boring up until the point we started doing this kind of stuff to most people.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't participate, could you? Not really.
Even if you could, nobody wanted to sit through the 401k meeting, right? Like, it was really boring that day. You know, people wanted to get back to work, not sit through that bullshit by HR, so they did, right? For the most part, people that draw an interest from that are always going to draw an interest from that. And that's kind of what we've got most of our industry composed of right now, is people who geeked out on finance, right? So of course it's going to get talked about. But I want
to pose a question about Jacob Wayne's question. The last part of it is, or will they always dumb it down to numbers and energy use to slow adoption? So
quants are an interesting animal.
Do you think that the energy use thing is to slow adoption? And if so, where's that coming from? And the other part is, it's always just going to be dumbed down to numbers and energy consumption? Is that just forever and nobody ever thinks about it in any other way?
I think it's all manipulated. I think it's not a mistake that it's happening at the time of this ETH merge. I sent a link to you guys in the private chat.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Yeah.
With that thing that's coming out, that they are tying it to energy use. And it's ridiculous that I heard the other day that data centers and maybe refrigerators or something crazy like that use more energy than Bitcoin mining. And if that's true, then we need to be looking at data centers and refrigerators.
Right.
Bitcoin mining.
And I love the merge because, you know, it's always great to economize anytime you can make something cost less in terms of price or energy to use.
But what is that motivation? Right? If that's not true, though, what is the hardcore motivation for that? Because, okay, let's assume
hatred for humanity has always been my take.
You mean for the merge, the motivation for the merge, or the motivation
for the environmental case against Bitcoin and proof of work?
People believe that. People think that it can only be something that was said that, Lisa, you turned me on to a Twitter Spaces that I listened to right after that report recently that came out, that was basically White House suggesting that Congress can, you know, do this or do that to influence the future of proof of work mining and what it means and all that. And in that conversation, there was a good point that was brought up, because the language of that report, they're talking about proof of work as if it was an outdated concept. Like it was something that, this was like a proof of concept that, now we've had time to mature the technology and we can improve upon it by making it use less power with this proof of stake thing.
Right.
And if that's how either it's understood in government or how it's being preached in government, that's two different things, you know?
Well, let's say I invented a machine, guys. Let's say I invented a machine that was about this size. And in the side of it, you could socket in a standard wall outlet plug. And this would, without creating any waste, generate energy to the end of the universe sufficient to power anything you plugged into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I could mass manufacture them cheaply. How long would it be before people stopped caring about how much electricity costs?
Oh, I'm with you on that. I don't think the argument should be about we should conserve energy and not waste it. Sure. But energy has gotten us a lot of good things. We've progressed through time with energy use.
And that's why I think it is such a distraction. And so my point is, what is the motivation that they are so hell-bent hardcore on? Why is Ethereum so protected? And if you look at it, look who's protecting it. It's big finance. It's big bankers. It's old legacy finance, all that. And that is, in my mind, it's like, why? Well, because how do they control the money now? What games do they play? And I'm thinking derivatives, all of that shit. And I'm like, well, so is that possible with proof of stake? Is that why they're protecting it?
this is where proof of stake is sort of like, if somebody in the traditional
market, they can't do it with proof of work.
I've actually been exploring that, and it's actually it's going to be a very hard. If that's what they think, then they haven't read enough detail about how it was designed. The game theoretic constructs they created to make it so that you can't game the process of staking by taking control of the network. They may have some loophole that nobody thought of, but the system itself was designed, genuinely to be ungameable in that respect.
Right. Because with proof of
the mechanisms, like I could go into even one of them that I've begun to understand a little bit, and it would put everybody to fucking sleep. But
let's not go to sleep.
The reason it took 10 years to do is because they were thinking through this shit very carefully, including what happens if Wall Street tries to flood the market with staking.
Yeah. So if you tell somebody who's used to controlling everything that, okay, you can own all of it if you want, but we don't care. You still can't control it. This is proof of work mining. You can own all the Bitcoins if you want. That's fine. You still can't control it. You still can't decide who gets to play or not. And sort of lump that together again in proof of stake in a way that's sort of unsolving a solved problem, where now you can own all of it, and that directly gives you the leverage to control parts of the network that are not supposed to be controllable.
Well, there's a queue though that you have to get into to be added as a staker. You can't a whole bunch all at once by yourself. It would take hundreds of years to accumulate control of the network, given what's already staked.
Assuming that everybody who's staking already is good actors, I guess.
Right. Well, or at least that they're
it can work the other way too. Ron Paul said
distributed, right?
Remember,
right?
Like, assuming that everybody involved with Ethereum, as we move into Ethereum into 2.0 and post merge, is on an even playing field. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know how many stakers and validators and people that will control the network have been planning this for 10 years maybe, or however long it's been.
We technically don't know that about proof of work miners either.
Post-merge. I have no idea.
We technically don't know that about proof of work miners either, right?
No, we don't. We know that some proof of work is more centralized than others. We know that some networks are more centralized than others. We can measure things like data centers, like Lisa said. A mining facility is just another data center, type of data center. The existing data centers that are not cryptocurrency related do use more energy than the proof of work mining on Bitcoin, at least.
Right.
Probably all combined. But it's just a matter of here's what I think. I think it's going to be interesting, and I want to see what happens, because there's a lot of people saying this will work just as well.
And I've come around to that side, actually, starting as a skeptic.
I've seen
come around to think that it's very, very likely
that's going to.
The gating systems they put in place to keep accumulation of control of stakers from happening too fast will allow the rest of the network to introduce systematic changes that will stop any encroachments. It will be visible who's trying to do it well before they succeed.
What if you need an encroachment? What if you need to bring more good guys in because there's too many bad guys? Because you're also slowing that.
Right. And that might be a system update, right? You might actually democratize it further by doing things like identifying who has availed themselves of Tornado Cash and specially qualifying them for a cut in the line. You would know that wasn't the establishment, for example. There are tons of little ways you can modify the system to be more resilient against centralized takeover, so long as the active massive collective currently out there is governing it according to that idea. Right.
I remember reading about marketplace Sybil resistance. I think Loki had a paper or a discussion about that on their website pre-Oxen conversion. And that that was interesting too, where they were talking about there's a lot of interesting things that work to a degree. I just don't know how equally the solutions are. The works just as well thing is like, I don't know if it works just as well, especially not in all cases.
I think it probably works practically sufficiently for the now. That the tools are in place to adapt it. Should it look like that's going to become insufficient in the near future, right? Before somebody can quickly take it over it, there will be a way to intervene and plenty of tools with which to do so.
So Vitalik will figure
the right way to think. Well, not Vitalik will figure it out. Whoever proposes an EIP and gets it discussed to address the challenge will figure it out if the market is willing to adopt it. Right.
Okay.
But it's always going to be existing players in this decentralized validator system.
So you're betting on humans and ingenuity and brain.
But I've always bet on human ingenuity. So that's me. Like I'm never going to stop betting on human ingenuity.
I think
Malthus was an asshole. He was an idiot.
The hopeless romantic.
Well, if I'm wrong, I'll go down being glad of it.
That's nice.
Fair enough. Let's go on to the next question, which is from I Am For I Am. Question.
He's in the chat too.
Oh, awesome. How do we make blockchain interaction easier to use? This is the second half of the adoption curve. First part of growth and adoption are the early investors looking to score, number go up. They are willing to put in the time and effort to stumble through difficulties of use. This also includes early adopters. The masses need it to be easy, seamless, or unknowingly use blockchains for the dApps utility. Hard fact is adoption starts with number go up or venture capital, and this is how most projects get their first adoption of active users. So I Am For I Am is talking about the cold start problem here.
What about?
I think that's what he's talking about.
To pose a counter case, though, consider the App Store, the Apple App Store.
Yeah.
What triggered that? Early adopter developers flooding in mass for the advantage. The key is giving access to developers, and the rest will take care of itself. That's my short answer to that question.
Well, with the App Store, you're talking about like Apple App Store,
right? Like 15 different flashlight apps all of a sudden popped up in year 2, and they're announcing things like billions of developers just signed up, and it was measurable. Like,
well, there's also
people who want to build.
The flashlight apps were the best. They would just make your screen go white because there was no flashlight on your phone. Yeah, totally.
Because Steve Jobs wouldn't give up monomaniacal LED until enough people told him that he was being stupid about it.
Well, that was,
that's he was like, it's going to wear out the LED.
It was the first.
And they're like, yeah, maybe in 50 years, nobody holds an iPhone for that long. Right. But
so what I was talking about with the cold start thing is where, it's really difficult to get a network effect. And so with something like cryptocurrency, if you have a system where you need people to come in while it sucks, you need people to come in while it's boring, while it's difficult to use, while there's a very steep learning curve, all of these things are true. You need people that are willing to do that. And it's really, really difficult to get that unless you're incentivizing those people, whether it be reward systems, whether it be sweat equity in the platform or in the product or in the DAO that's trying to build something. Right. Later on, you might not get as many rewards from doing the same actions as you would have as an early adopter, right? Because
it's 15 flashlight app, right?
Lower barrier of entry
is the first one.
Yeah, right. With the flashlight app, now you can say, LED on. There's your flashlight. Right. Before you had to be like, okay, well, what's bright? Let me figure out. I guess if you turn the backlight all the way up and turn the screen white, that's as bright as we can make something. So there's a little bit more work to be done.
Right, and it's enough to hold down by your knees while you walk to the bathroom at night without turning the light off.
It works enough. It works enough. Yeah, right.
Right. So, but the really interesting to me about this question is, is how it thinks about consumers as an endpoint, and then thinks about today's marketplace statically. Right. Like we have only so many developers involved right now. Right. And they're working on building the basic level of sort of reliable infrastructure, a platform that people can adapt on top of without changing the underlying platform is goal number one. Right. It needs to be a carrier for whatever people want to build. Once we get to the point that it can carry whatever people want to build, that's when you start seeing 1 billion developers this month signed up and 15 different flashlight apps. That's when people start iterating on.
Marketplace has to be there for the developers.
That once we have a sufficiently versatile platform, the developers will take care of the UX en masse, right? It won't be the people who run Ethereum figuring out the flashlight app in a vacuum.
Right.
It'll be a million people creating an application that just so happens justifies becoming an EIP, and then they add it to the network later, right? Like this is like,
or even
it's
more
a slow process of iteration that ultimately makes it possible to have it all happen really quickly. And that's when the last
we already have you can use your like they have the Litecoin card that runs on with Visa. People don't even know they're receiving Litecoin. I can pay with my Visa card, and
that's what I do. Same thing with Cash App and Bitcoin.
Yes, and the Cash App, and you can and you get the rewards of you can bonus up your Cash App or Boost or whatever they call it, your card if So that's when I think that's when it will happen, is when people don't even know they're using it. Like I technically don't know how my credit card works. I don't have to know how my credit card works. And once people don't have to know how blockchain works to use it, that's when we'll hit that mass adoption. Right now, you have to know how to use it.
You won't need to know how it works under the hood to build on it. That's when you start having people come on exclusively focused on the front end.
The building on it part. That's where I think currently a lot of people are not interested in cryptocurrency for a couple of reasons, but one of them is that really it's a developer's playground right now. You have to be a certain kind of person who likes to build things that don't exist. Vitalik talked about how Ethereum does not. It's one of the first examples of a technology that, instead of automating away the menial tasks on the like the factory workers on the floor and the repetitive tasks that the blue collar jobs and things like that, instead of automating that away, the workers don't. Like he used the example I remember of Uber in saying that the drivers don't lose their jobs. Uber loses its job. It's
exactly.
Where, people will come in and they will build companies on this platform, and people will use this app, and it'll just be an app on the App Store. And the other part of that is not even knowing it's a blockchain thing. Just like not knowing what database you're using.
Is that going to move forward, like with the metaverse thing? Like these kids are playing games. They don't realize they're using blockchain to create something.
It is.
Until it comes time to transfer their assets over to version 2 of the game or another game, they don't realize they're holding NFTs instead of just items in the game.
Right. This is where Roblox is right now. I realized that my nephew had been playing Roblox for like a year, and I was like, Roblox, like the thing that swamped the Ethereum network and made our fees go up, and we had to delay publishing DIN's contracts because they were in the middle of launching that Roblox. Yeah, that one. He's like, what is he? He's in second grade, whatever that is. You know what I mean? He doesn't know or care about anything related to the underlying technology or where it came from or any of that. But it's getting into kids' heads now, and they're using it. And I think it is going to be just like, oh, it's online school. Right.
Not exactly. Or like, how people would build up an account in like an MMO and then try to sell it. And the terms of the company would be such that you can't do that. Right. Because they were worried about the government saying, well, you've created a currency and we're going to come in and shut you down. Right. Things that the government puts pressure on people not to do economically become a moot point if the government can't, no matter what they say. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is like people beginning to realize permissionlessness is powerful, right? At a developer level. I mean, if you look at Polygon Network, right? There's a paper or an article published in August that I shared with you guys. Since June, 400% growth in the number of applications running on it that people are using on a daily basis. Right? They're up to 37,000 applications. Imagine when that hits 37 million. How many different kinds of problems are going to solve? Or 37 billion, right? When every company on earth is now a DAO, and the people building it are just open source developers who wanted to create a solution to a problem they see. Like that's the world of even grandma can use it because somebody has taken the time to solve her specific problem.
I want to read just the bold points here because there's a lot to I am for I am's question. I encourage everyone to read the comments, but I won't take the time to read all of them right now, except the bold points, which I think, thank you for bolding some of them. Utility and market needs, solution, entice investors, foundational active users to invest in blockchain tech, while ease of use grows massive adoption. When it's utility, it solves a real problem.
Which means it's
so
for adoption.
Yeah, ease of use versus utility, adoption versus development, and things like that. Build it and they will come. And it is a field of dreams. It is Hollywood fiction. I think the point there is that you can't just build it and hope people show up to use it. It's a little bit more difficult than that. Number go up is the driving force. Unfortunately, this is how the masses think. And yeah, this is how the masses think, because I know in a lot of cases, there's some of the most difficult conversations that I have had have come after a big craze in cryptocurrency, where I thought, oh, people are getting into this now and people are adopting it. And so like, I have been introduced to people in the past, like, oh, you should talk to Dave. He's really into blockchain and crypto. I'm like, oh yeah, what's up? And they're just like, oh yeah, well, I got some of this and I bought some of that, and this has gone up 200% and that has gone down 80%, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm just like, oh, okay. And I try to have a conversation about what it is they're investing in. And they don't think about that, that part of it. Maybe that's why I'm poor. I don't know. Because I'm always just wanting useful stuff. And I'm always, playing with service nodes and mining equipment and things that are
right. And that's your level of interest, right? And your goal ultimately may not be to make sure that anybody with a vague interest in building a thing that works on whatever they want it to work on might use something that you worked on years later in the background without them knowing it. But like, we have to get to a place where the builders can mass adopt before we can get to the place where the people can mass adopt.
Well, you're also, along with something you said about, for example, Polygon, there's a lot of VCs right now and a lot of individuals who are marketing themselves as consultants who are telling companies, you have to build on this. So when you hire a developer or when you approach a cryptocurrency or a blockchain company and you want to build a product, we build on this, and this is where you should build. And it's because that person has a bag of that thing. It isn't always in the best interest of the client or the friend of the VC or the company itself. It's in the interest of the person who's telling them how they should think about building their stuff. And so we do
that impulse to control.
We do see that, and Polygon's one of those as well, is where there's a lot of people that have bags of Polygon that are like, no, we use Polygon in these parts. That
it also does have a really great properties for building on a blockchain, so long as it can commit back to a really secure network. You can use that proof of stake system to do a lot of stuff real fast. It is also true that the Dragon chain is just as capable of doing a lot of those things, right? You guys have focused more on to a certain degree, an enterprise strategy, right? Those people will need to be brought on, and there's some big applications that they won't relinquish control of unless they can see it work end to end, like with supply chains and stuff like that. You won't see any global shipping companies picking it up as an open standard and sort of ad hocing it as they go, because it's a very government controlled process. There are men with guns on either shore waiting to see that they filled the forms out correctly.
Right. Like you don't know where most of the things you use are actually hosted, or what they're operating on, or what's under the hood and things like that.
Right.
That's Dragon chain. Dragon chain is the under the hood tech. It's not in Ethereum too, and Polygon, and these aren't like Ethereum's not going to build the new Uber without the company that's controlling it, the Uber DAO. Right. It's going to be somebody who decides, you know what, I could probably do a more efficiently operating company than them. I'm going to go build it because there's a platform ready and waiting, and I'm building on that. So whenever you use the system, maybe it's called Better Uber or something, right? You're not going to think, like, oh,
or adopt a scooter company that you can start without asking permission of the local government. You can't stop it.
And it's just you're using the thing, and the more that you have layers built upon, like I don't think they should update Bitcoin anymore, layer 1. I think Taproot's great. I think we should stop there, and maybe some bug fixes if they come up, but like, let's do layer 2. Let's do other stuff. And
maybe there's somebody out there who thinks you're wrong because the thing that I'm working on deserves to be there, and maybe the market will prove it right. The cool thing about crypto is that it doesn't stop anybody from trying, and that's the thing. That's to me the core character of it that we need to preserve. If we want this to happen quickly.
Yeah, the more people trying, the better ideas you come up with.
Yeah, but ultimately, like the point where people go to the grocery store or NFT every time they buy a box of cereal, and they just don't realize it.
People have been doing rewards points
5, 6, 7 years off at best, right?
Yeah. When's my McDonald's Monopoly peel game going to be like a token? That kind of thing. Scan your box of fries, and you'll get a unique token. With a provably fair chance of it not being cheated or faked or something like that.
Right, or exactly but people won't even think about it like that. They'll think, scan this McDonald's box and I get access to a special Ronald McDonald styled armor in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, and that's all it has to be to them. Yeah, that's all it needs to be. Right.
The background stuff shouldn't matter unless, of course, they want to go sell it on the global marketplace of unique one-offs that they made for promotional purposes at McDonald's, which will be a thing you can use with NFTs that you couldn't use with.
But then that's a security.
Right, yeah, until we get rid of that shit.
Sell my Parks Place from McDonald's to somebody who has a whatever the other blue is.
If Gary Gensler could force us to tokenize our farts, we'd have to register them before we took shit.
Right on. So let's see. We got the next question is from Darux. And Darux asks, it would be much better if the distribution of tokens went to ordinary people and not institutions. For this, we need to get people to know the topic. How would you introduce blockchain technology in the simplest way to people who don't know anything about it yet? Are you talking to laymen about blockchain, or are you rather busy talking to industry-only people who understand more complex topics? And I would say, Lisa, you probably have a lot more experience than many people that I talk to with talking to people who don't already understand blockchain. So maybe
we love doing this, and this is kind of my jam, and I love talking to people, new people. And the first thing you have to do is teach people or talk to people about what money is, because most people don't understand that money is just a tool that represents our labor to save it to use for a later time. And then right now, of course, we're in this recession that no one's calling a recession. And with the inflation that you guys were talking about earlier, we're having extra difficult conversations, but it's actually encouraging people to so once you get them to understand what money is, and the fact that it's just to save your labor of today to be used at a future time, now they're even more concerned about putting it into something that's going to be worth more or holding that value in the future, because they're watching it erode so quickly in these paper dollars, And so then you can start having that conversation. What we do is we'll start talking about silver, and we compare it to mining. We talk about mining crypto and mining silver. Well, it takes energy, digging, and resources, energy to get silver out of the ground, and then it has value. Or precious metals. And so we talk about that, the same thing with talking about proof of work and all that. And that's how we introduce people to cryptocurrency, with using energy, and that's what gives it the value. And that tends to resonate with people.
So we basically relating it to something that a person might already understand
Yeah.
So that it illustrates the concepts and why it works the way it does.
If it's somebody that's like totally, doesn't, not techie at all, and that's a lot of the people that we talk to,
there's
just
also a
start
pernicious
there.
myth, I think, about computers that has to be dispelled before you can anybody about it, right? Because there's some people who are just so hard-headed on this idea that anything that happens in a computer can be copy-pasted, right? No complexity in computing. These people just don't understand yet that cryptography can make digital things scarce, right? That there are there's this problem called P equals NP, right? This idea that you can create a security algorithm that easily secures any information and hides it in gibberish. That would take all the computing power of an imaginary supercomputer powered on all the energy that physicists have calculated is left in the universe, and then some, to break, given infinite time. Right? You have to get people to the point where they see, okay, nobody can break through this by running a computer that just guesses passwords eventually, right? Once you get to that point, you can go, okay, now imagine that in order to edit this database, you have to be able to do that reliably every 10 seconds. And you have to be able to do that reliably faster than that, actually. You have to do it like twice the speed, because you got to trick this network into thinking you found a thing that you would have to break cryptography that fast to do. Like, you quickly realize it becomes impossible to lie to a blockchain, about what you actually have.
We have an entire class where we start talking about comparing it to the silver. We talk about scarcity. We have a whole thing where we go through the class with everybody and talk about different, benefits of cryptocurrency over dollars. We talk about the fact that you're already on a digital ledger. If you think you're not, go down and try to take your money out of the bank, and you will find out quickly they don't have as many paper dollars that you think they do.
Right. Good luck getting $100,000 in cash. They have to order it.
Yeah. It'll be there next Tuesday.
Yeah.
But so we kind of go through I think there's all those points. So just kind of depends on where you have to meet them where they are.
Exactly. And also catch something they're interested in, right? Like you have to speak to something that's in somebody's heart to do, right? If I'm going to sell the idea of blockchains to supply chain people, I have to understand like what the problems are in shipping. And I have to be able to speak to those problems intelligently and point out where, permissionlessness and trustlessness can help them do their job faster with less pain in the ass. And all of a sudden they care, right? Like if they get more value more quickly because we can make these changes using this system that you could never make before because you couldn't trust people.
I also like to boil it down, talking about trusting people. I also like to boil it down to just the basic fact that it makes it more difficult for people to cheat and or lie. Like that's the most fundamental argument that I have for things like Bitcoin and blockchain accountability. And this may not be the best analogy, but I like it. And it's one I came up with that I call the group text points club, basically, where if we just assume that we have a bunch of people in a group text, text messages, and we all have a ledger on paper, keeping track of who has what amount of points. And every time any of us exchanges favors or value or products with each other, we send out a group text saying, hey, I'm transferring this much to that person. Everybody picks up their paper, checks to see if, okay, yep, you got that much. And then they send out a group text saying, yep, confirmed, and you get enough people to say, yep, checks out. Everybody updates their ledger and you move along.
Right.
And then
and before that had to be done with like independent auditors because you couldn't trust people to not lie. Right.
And everything from there is scaling up. How do you scale up and account for human nature? How do you account for cheating and lying? How do you account for collaboration between people that have their own notebooks and they're going like, hey, as soon as you do this, I'm gonna have a text ready to send out saying, yeah, it's fine. Exactly. Before other people have a chance to, everything is just, that's why you need computers is to do that at scale.
Well, and even credit cards, I didn't realize this, but Johnny Litecoin's on my show with me on Thursday afternoons, and he's been in credit card processing payment services for a long time, and he was saying that the banking system allows for credit card processing to be pulled back from businesses up to 6 months, any charge.
It does.
Yeah.
And so that could devastate a mom and pop business. You think you have this amount of, cash or purchase or whatever, and then 6 months later they do a charge back on you for something, and all of a sudden, you're fighting them for it. I mean,
I got to experience that once very personally in college, because I was living in over the summer. I was living in my university town. I decided to stay there, and my dad was kind enough to cover rent and spending money so that I could do summer classes. And he sent me a drop of money that I was like, okay, I can use this to pay rent and I can go get this. And he gave me some extra. Neat. Well, it just so happened the extra he gave me was double the amount he said he was going to send once upon a time. And I was like, oh, cool. He just decided to be generous. Well, as it turns out, I double entered the transaction. So when they found out 4 months later, and I had like $50 in my bank account, like every college kid, they pulled it back and said, you owe us thousands of dollars. Like that can't happen on blockchains.
And all the fees that go along with it, and all the overdraft fees and this, that kind of thing.
Right. Oh, exactly. That is a human mediated auditing system, right? And you have to trust the auditors. You have to have auditors. They have to have a bureaucracy and a published process, and there has to be a bureaucracy to make sure that shit works. So much waste of time checking other people's work can be done away with this.
Yeah, this is technology that allows folks who to not have to trust someone to do it right.
You can trust that nobody can lie to these types of algorithms because there's
mortal enemies can transact with each other in confidence.
And I didn't
have the opportunity to cheat them.
I didn't realize that was so important. Also for, the younger generations. Miss Teen Crypto was out, she goes out in Manhattan. She's like out on the streets talking to people about blockchain, asks them if they know about Bitcoin, and ask them, what they use for money, whatever, and why. And a lot of the teens, or I don't know if they're Gen Z or something. I don't know what they are.
But I think they've come up with a new, I don't think they've moved into the,
double alphabet, double A's or whatever.
They should have started with generation 0. And,
I don't know,
and
something
hexadecimals, man.
Something, but they all talked about this trust factor, and it really surprised me because I was like, well, you use cash, but they live in New York. I'm from Oklahoma, and we all trust each other and have neighbors, and not all trust each other, but you know what I mean. It's a different environment, a little smaller communities, smaller world.
And they have to have black lights
girls in New York. Right. So I'm like, wow, here these teens are in Manhattan going, yeah, we use Cash App because we don't trust each other, to transact with your friends. So even more use case or,
Well, and imagine when they realize that they don't have to have the fees of the platform enrich anybody but the people using the platform. Like they should get paid a little bit every time they use it from the transaction fee pool because there shouldn't be a need for somebody to sit in the middle and collect a salary to make sure that transactions happen like they say they do. And there shouldn't have to be a team of auditors that sucks more of that cost away, and a team of auditors for the auditors, and then auditors for the auditing protocol. And there's all this economic waste that goes into checking people's work, just to make sure that those systems like Cash App work when you could just do it with a ledger that checks itself and secures itself with, math that all the computers in the universe working together for infinite time couldn't break, right? It becomes the new bureaucracy. We can ultimately bring this down to it's a system for disintermediating bureaucracies, which sucks. As bureaucrats really hate to lose their jobs to automation.
But that's some science I can believe in.
So hey, we got we're up on time. We got a quick question from the crocodile that we can hit.
Yeah.
which is the last one anyway. We did a decent job of summing this up at the very top, so we've kind of already answered this question. But I'll hit it again. What does blockchain for go up mean? Basically, that was my first question when I saw this proposed too. It's like, yeah, okay, we understand number go up, the meme, but what does blockchain go up even mean? And we talked about already a little bit. Maybe we can hit on it again or add something that we didn't put in there. But basically, blockchain go up. What does that mean? What does the blockchain for go up mean?
To me, I'll take a crack at this one too, because I was going to say this and I didn't. But to me, it means the liberty to act permissionlessly being a thing that you can do in any domain you apply it to, right? Like it's about the freedom to choose what you do when you do it with the things that you own permissionlessly. It's a liberating thing from other people checking your work.
I would say that, yeah, for me, it's the number that would go up in blockchain go up. What would be going up would be the number of people that are playing on a fair and even playing field. Yep. With confidence.
Right. That doesn't employ armies of auditors to make sure it's fair.
Yeah.
Right. The participants are the auditors.
Yeah. The truth protocol applied across the board, not just in money, but in contracts, across all applications.
Right. So the boring bullshit that nobody wants to deal with gets background processed by software.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The question for me is, and maybe we can wrap up with this since we're at time, but it's, I think both of you were hitting on it a little bit with the questions that Miss Teen Crypto was asking in New York, and the things that you were bringing up, Greg, where if we live in a time today where we don't require people that don't do much of anything to make sure that the trust is safeguarded, then why do we still rely on them? If we don't need the waste in our transactions and in our proof systems, and the fallibility of human error in our monetary systems, why do we choose to continue spending our money to pay for them? Right.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a slow slog because bureaucracy is primarily concerned with self-justification, right? To hand them this and say, look at this and say that this doesn't do your job for everybody, that there's no need for you to be here anymore. Question that they get asked very lightly or very, very often. And their responses are usually hostile.
And it would be more
when you're bullied and threatened with the next layer up, that's when the 3-letter agencies come with their handcuffs for you.
Yeah, and that's why I just want to ask people,
ARs, I guess now.
You want the golden parachute now that you're not required anymore? Like, should we all just pay you off to go away? Like what do you want here? Because really you're pretty unnecessary anymore.
But that's where we stop asking them and we just ignore them. Like, what did your parents tell you when somebody was like picking on you, or mom, they're telling me she's touching me? I don't know if you guys have siblings, but I have a lot of siblings, and my mom would say, just ignore them. They don't stop giving them your power, and I think that's what we have to do is ignore them and stop giving them our power. You
get familiar at all with the writings of Etienne Laboetie?
No, I'm not.
Okay, this guy has an answer for us, and it comes from early French Enlightenment, like pre-Revolution Enlightenment era. His basic notion was simply that you should resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. As soon as you stop doing anything to help them, you don't have to do anything other than stop engaging with them, and they lose all their power, right? Like
one thing to make that easier
to stop paying taxes, the IRS couldn't arrest everybody.
Yeah, I think one thing that makes that a lot easier to pull that Band-Aid off, because the system we have right now is just built because we don't have anything better. We didn't have a better way to do it than this. And now that we do, I think some things that, like, for example, the Monero community is pushing hard on is building out parallel systems, and other communities as well, not just Monero, but building out parallel systems that do all the things that the existing system does, that can operate in parallel. And then once people are using both, it'll be a lot easier to just turn off the one that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get there.
Okay, here we go. I found the quote. Can I read it to you guys?
Okay, sure.
Etienne Laboite said, "Resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. I do not ask that you place hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer, that you would behold him like a great colossus, whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of his own weight, and break into pieces."
Yeah, it's not a call for violence. It's a call for not supporting.
Just don't give them your power. Yes.
We stop taking it seriously when they show up. We go, okay.
Now that I can get down with.
Thanks for coming over.
Yep.
That's the point at which they lose all their power. Yes. And that's the point at which we, I think, really have to get to enable mass adoption. Because as soon as people can do that, and they see, that's where the system revolutionizes itself.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't require violence.
I agree.
It does require a lot of willpower and education, though, I think.
Well, all right. It's that whole thing, like, to be free, you have to take personal responsibility. And to that point, not everyone wants to do that. Some people are perfectly fine being a slave. And, you have to choose freedom. That's true. Yeah. It
surprises me, but it's obviously very true. A lot of people even prefer it that way. So, what are you going to do?
We can always count on right, is laziness to take over. So if we can make it so people can be sufficiently lazy without getting in trouble, the masses will come along for the ride.
Right. That's the ease of use and the onboarding and the, like not even having to. You're not going to sell blockchain to somebody who doesn't care about blockchain. You have to make a product or a company or a system that they do want to use, or a video game or whatever.
You have to gamify it. Yeah.
And you use it that way. So, all right. So we are definitely at time. Thanks everybody for giving us questions and things to talk about today. In closing, I would like to thank all of our hosts. So, Lisa, I will start with you. What do you want to say today going out while we wrap up the show?
Thanks for having me on. I love these Thursday mornings. I feel like I learn something new every week. I really am grateful to be a part of what's going on with Den.Social and Dragon Chain. And you guys are just really, really dear to my hearts and important to me. So thank you for having me on.
I always appreciate conversations with you as well. Where can people follow you and find you and your channels?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, weekdays at 4 Central, 5 Eastern, and on Twitter at Lisa Mighty Davis. All
right. Thank you very much. Greg, how about yourself? Same questions.
And I'm going to kind of give the same answer. We all have a lot of different areas of knowledge, and Lisa, you're no different. I learn as much from you as you learn from me, I would say. And I appreciate more than anything the heart that you bring to this. It humanizes this whole thing in a way that I think more projects and more people will be well served to make a part of the way that they think about this. And it's just like it's powerful and it's persuasive, and it reminds me of why we do this. Why we're actually fighting this fight. And I guess I would encourage everybody to stop for a moment and think about the heart that you can put into this, to think about who you can help with what you know, because ultimately that's how we're going to build this. We're going to persuade people by helping them gratuitously. If the system works like it should, it will take care of the money in the background. The numbers will go up if we do the part of building to help. So, and I think that's probably a great summary for this episode from my standpoint. So that's
Thank
me,
you.
But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. I'll plug Den.Social and say, if you want to help build a community over there and bring some people along, it's a great idea, and it's working, and it allows us to operate on a social publishing network that isn't predatory to our communities. So that's my biggest plug for that. And to what Greg was saying as well, what's the quote? Don't believe everything that you breathe. You'll get a parking violation and a maggot on your sleeve. There's a lot of things that are put out that are just bullshit. And in some cases, it wasn't always that way. So even the things that you used to trust and have good reasons for, maybe look again and see if you can still trust that entity that's putting out information. The hard truth is that the world is changing. We aren't going back to the way it was just a handful of years ago. And so if the world is changing, it's changing with or without us, maybe we can change with us, because if we don't participate in that change, then you don't know who's making the decisions to change the world for their betterment at the detriment of yourselves and your families. So I don't want to instill fear, but I do want to instill a sense of responsibility.
Right. Come to the table, because you don't want to be on the menu. Not to say people are going to put you on it, but.
All right. Cool. So join the WBRT layer in Den to ask questions. Next week, we're going to be talking about cloud mining applications. Be sure to share this episode. The more you share, the more lot our hosts and topic contributors will get. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next Thursday for World Blockchain Roundtable. Thanks.
No mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party.